Music theory with Microsoft Excel. Auto transposable music system through all 12 collections of 7 notes, automatically rotatable through all 7 modal perspectives, changing the tonic upon rotation. Part number 9. So get ready and some coffee because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin', and you need Microsoft Excel for that. Yes, you do. You do need Microsoft. We are in Excel. If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay because we basically built this from a blank worksheet but started in a prior presentation. So if you want to build this entire worksheet from a blank sheet, you could begin back there or just follow along building the part of the worksheet that we're currently working on. If you do have access to this workbook though, 4 tabs down below, including a very colorful fretboard tab, we may refer to the example tab, in essence the answer key, the practice tab having pre-formatted cells so you can practice the practice problem with less Excel formatting. But if you don't have any of that, that is okay because we will continue our work in the blank tab where we started from scratch with a blank worksheet, basically going to continue in essence in the blank part of the worksheet, practicing not only our music skills but our Excel formatting skills as well for formatting's sake. Let's go to the start of this worksheet to get a reminder of what we're looking for, what our objective is, what we've done thus far. We want to be creating a musical system that we can jot down our musical information, our music ideas, our songs, our tunes, our melodies in a way as efficient as possible, even if by paper and pencil, so that we can automatically transpose that information to all 12 collections of 7 notes and possibly even rotate it to all 7 modal perspectives, automatically changing the tonic as we do so. Also, I truly believe that the DAW systems will develop to have this type of functionality in the future as well. So it's good to just think about those 2 dials from a musical system as well as how I think the DAWs are going to be working at some point in the future because it's more efficient, particularly for people working by ear. So to do that, we have the DAW numbering system, which is like a computer numbering system for the notes going through multiple octaves. Then we had a numbering system for human beings, 1 through 12, for in essence middle C, or it repeating as we go around in a circle. We have a numbering system for the Nashville numbers, that being 7 out of 12 notes because we're always working in essence in a subset of 7 notes. If we look at all of the notes from the perspective of the 7 note subset, that allows us the pivot point, the dial that will allow us to go through all perspectives of 12 notes as well as rotate that 7 note perspective, as we will see shortly. We also have our chords, remembering that we would like to have a system better than sheet music, better than the DAW system, where we have the option of not just stacking notes to build chords, but actually just write the chord down like in tablature. Tablature is actually more sophisticated than sheet music or a DAW right now, which is ridiculous. We should have the option to at least choose the standard chords and have them map out in some kind of chord format, possibly better not to refer to the note names, but rather the relative position names, so that once again, we can easily write down our song as cleanly as possible, and we can then adjust it easily to all 12 collections of notes and pivot it through the modal perspectives. So then we looked at all of our collections of 12 notes, looking at it from the perspective, however, of the Nashville numbers, noting that we have 12 relative positions for the Nashville numbers going through 1 through 7, but adding 0.5s in there for the 5 notes that are outside the collection. That's what gives us the pivot. That's what gives us the dial. That's what allows us to rotate automatically and easily. We then have the data input system here where we could do it as I would recommend, even if by hand, if you're just writing your tunes down, then you want to represent the chords, I would recommend, without referring to the note names, but rather select which collection of notes you're in from the perspective of the major scale, like a C major or G major or G mixolydian or whatever, and then write down your chords in a way that doesn't refer to the note, but rather refers to the modal point or Nashville number. then you can also write down the actual melodies in a similar fashion, not with the note names, but with the Nashville number names. Why? Because then you don't have to rewrite them if you want to transpose them to all 12 collections of 7 notes. All you have to say is, look, I'm looking at the collection of notes around the C major. Now I'm looking at the collection of notes around the G major. Don't have to rewrite anything. All the nodes are in relative position. Makes perfect sense. We should be able to change that to this perspective, referring to the note names as well in a DAW. So if it was in a DAW, I should have the option of writing this as notes or as relative positions. There should be multiple ways that I can see the chords. Why not? They should be available to us. We should be able to toggle through the different ways we want to view the chords and the different perspectives we want to view the notes. And I believe that people that learn by ear, that don't know the piano, will gravitate towards the Nashville numbering system. Why? Because they're entering a keyboard, which is its own musical instrument if properly designed. We could just play music with a 10 key like a typewriter. Wouldn't that be cool for an accountant? Yes, it would. That's what I want to see. Someone get it done. What the heck? For crying out loud. The keyboard's not, the computer is not a piano. I'm sorry. I love the piano, again, but I mean, okay. Okay, so once we have this, notice that we're able to write things down like a tablature, like you might write things for a guitar tab, meaning instead of mapping it out, if I'm playing in one octave, instead of having to stack all the notes like this, like we might do in sheet music or in a DAW system, we have just this one line that is representing the middle octave that we're in, which should start on whatever the lowest note is that we're working in. So if it was a C, it would be C4. If it was a G, it would be like a G4, for example. And then 12 notes up from there will fit in this octave. That then allows us to write chords as well as notes on one row, which is a lot more compact, neat, easy to see, still allows you to see the patterns, particularly if you use numbers, Nashville numbers, because then you can easily see the pattern like you would on one row, and there's only 7 to 12 numbers, so it should be pretty easy to kind of track. And then we can go to the next line up. Now, if we wanted to expand this, then it should be expandable, moving over to the DAW here, so that we can see it in a stacked format like this, and we can see it in the note position like this, and we can see it then in the Nashville numbers. These should all be things that we should be able to toggle back and forth to in a modern database, a modern DAW, a modern MIDI system. Okay, so then once we have that, we're working on, what if I wrote this in C and then I wanted to rotate to all 12 collections of notes? If I write something like this, then I should be able to rotate it by just naming the collection of notes that I'm in. So we have that down here. It's currently in a C. What if I make it an 11? Now everything from the perspective of a G major. So that allows me, if I'm working in a major, to toggle through all of the different majors, and you can see over here that that's going to change to now a G. So a G, and then everything's from the perspective. So it automatically rotates. That's how the system is designed to work. So we should do that even if you're doing it by hand. I believe that's the most efficient way to write your tunes, so you can tinker with them. But I'd also like to rotate them around. So if I write the thing from the perspective of an Ionian mode, I'd like to be able to rotate it to like a Dorian node or any of the other modal perspectives. Now remember that when I do that, if I'm using Nashville numbers, then when I rotate this around, the numbers will remain the same. That's one way you can view it. You could still view it from the perspective of a D Dorian versus a C Ionian, but the Nashville numbers are going to remain the same because we're going to keep those permanent. So what I'm talking about when I say we're going to rotate it around, I'm going to say, look, if this is in the perspective of the Ionian, then the Ionian is the tonic. So when I move to the Dorian, I want to pivot. I want to shift all the chords that I played to the Dorian. So this Ionian, I want it to change to a Dorian chord. This Dorian chord needs to shift one note up in the pattern to the Phrygian to the Lydian, and so on. And so we did that last time with the chords, meaning all these chords, we shifted them up down here when we went to the Dorian. So now I've got the whole thing played out again, but now these got shifted up. The Ionian is the Dorian, and then the Dorian was now turned to the Phrygian. I just deleted it, and so on and so forth. So we figured out kind of how to do that. Now, when we do that, remember that it's not an exact shift in terms of absolute notes, because there's 12 notes in the musical alphabet. What we did with the chords is we shifted from an Ionian 3-note chord to a Dorian 3-note chord. There's a difference between those two chords because the Dorian is a minor mode and the Ionian is a major mode. So when we did the shift, we made the chord that fits, right? So if you use chords and we turn the dial around to the modal perspectives, it's going to shift the chords. It's going to snap the chords, if you want to think about it like that, into place, so that we'll be playing something that's in key, as opposed to rotating each of the relative notes in the chord the same distance, in which case you might end up with notes that are out of key. In this case, the third would be out of key most likely. Okay, so that's that. But then we could have notes up top, or we could have the Nashville numbers over here, which represents the notes or the chords. So now let's think about what are we going to do with these Nashville numbers. Now, if I'm rotating from an Ionian perspective to a Dorian perspective, then basically these Nashville numbers are going to still represent 1 through 7, and then the 0.5s are going to be basically the ones in the middle. But the Ionian represents the tonic in this case. So everything that was the tonic, the Ionian, I want to pivot to the Dorian. So from a Nashville number system, 1 is the Ionian. I want to pivot it to a 2, which is the Dorian. And that's so all of the Nashville numbers then, 1 through 7, not including the 0.5 numbers, are pretty easy to rotate. I'm just going to turn the dial. I'm just going to rotate them all one Nashville number position. Now remember, the Nashville numbers are only 7 out of the 12 notes. So that's not always going to be an even distance in terms of like half steps. So that if I have a whole number, in other words, I'm always going to rotate it so that it lands on a whole number from the perspective of the next mode. So the Ionian is in the Ionian perspective, the Ionian is a 1. I'm going to rotate it 1 up to a 2, which will be still in the key or in the 7-note collection. If it's a 2, which is the Dorian here, I'm going to rotate it 1 up, which will be the Phrygian. If it's a 3, I'm going to rotate it up 1, which will be the 4 of the Lydian, right? So that works because that means that I'm going to rotate it to something that stays in key, because what I wrote was in key. So if I wrote the song that's in key with chords that are in key, I'm going to rotate it to chords that are in key from the perspective of the Dorian. If I wrote individual notes that are in key, I'm going to rotate them to the note that's in key from the Dorian perspective. But what if I wrote a note that's out of key, represented by the 1.5 in this case? So this one's in the Ionian Ocean is what I call it, right? So when I rotate it, it could go to a 2.5, right? If I add 1, it's going to end up at a 2.5. So that works because it was out of key. So I'm going to end up with something that's out of key. So that is fine. But it's possible that if it's out of key, that I end up with something that is going to be basically in key. Why would that happen? Because what if I'm on like a 2.5 here? If I had a 2.5 and I go 1 up, it would end up at a 3.5. But there is no 3.5. Why? Because there's no 0.5 between the 3 and the 4 from a Nashville number system. So that means that I can't go to a 3.5. Therefore, I'm going to have to push it up basically to a 4 in that case. So in that case, I wrote something originally that was out of key, but when I turn the dial, when I shift it, it's going to have to land on something that's in key. Either it's going to go 0.5 up, or it's going to go to the 4 here. So that's going to be the pivot system that I'm going to be using. So that means all of the chords are going to rotate up, and they will snap into place and have all of the related chords as we rotate in key. All of the notes that were in key from a Nashville number system, we'll just rotate them up, and they will all remain in key. But the things that are out of key, when I rotate them, could land out of key, or they might land on something that's in key, right? It just depends on what the rotation looks like. So if I go up from a 1.5 and there is a 2.5, then it'll go there, it'll be out of key. If it's in a 2.5 though, it would then go to a 3.5. There is none, so I have to either shift it up or back. I'm going to shift it up to the 4. If it's at a 4.5, then I can go to the 5.5. If it's at a 5.5, then I can go to 6.5, which would be out of key. But if I'm at 6.5, then there is no 7.5, because that's right before it gets back to the 1 again. So that means that I'm going to have to convert that to the 7, which is a little wonky because I'm going to want to convert it up to 8 and then back down to 7. Okay, so let's think about how can we do that, like from a formula. I'm not going to combine it with the formula I did here first. I'm going to try to think about how can I do what I want to do if I only had these Nashville numbers to deal with to do those rules that I want to do, and then think about what I can combine together with what we did last time, so I have one formula for both of them. All right, so let's see. Hopefully that made some sense. Okay, so what I want to do then, the most basic formula would be, this is going to be equal to the Nashville number up here, that 1, and then I'm just going to add 1 to it. I'm going to say plus 1. Boom. That's going to give me a 2. So that would work on all of them, except that 1, it goes above 8. That's a problem. And 2, it lands on like a 3.4, which isn't a number. A 3.5 isn't a number from a Nashville number perspective, right? That wouldn't be in the ocean. There is no 3. So to get rid of this bit, I could do something like this. If that was the only problem, I could say, well, if tab this plus that copy is less than 8, then do that. If not, do that minus 7. That would be the standard correction, and that would work if I copy that across, but it doesn't solve this problem. It doesn't solve the problem of this 3.5 not being in the Nashville numbers. So I have to do something specific if I land on a 3.5 or a 7.5. So if the result would be a 3.5 or a 7.5, then I have to do something different. So let's go back to the original formula here and say, okay, let's do this. Let's delete this bit and just start with our basic formula again, which is just going to be that plus 1. So that plus 1 is 2. So then I'm going to say, okay, now let's do an if. And let's build this out. I'm going to say if tab this plus 1, if that plus 1 equals 3.5, which is the one that doesn't work, right? Then what do I want you to do? Well, then I want you to give me a 4, because I'm going to push it up to 4. Okay? And then if not, if it doesn't equal 3.5, it's anything other than 3.5, then what do you want to do? I'm going to embed another if. If tab this again equals 7.5, which is the other one that's a problem. 7.5 isn't, there is no 7.5 Nashville number. That's not even an ocean number. So we're going to say, okay, if that happens, then what do I want you to do that? I want you to do this. I'm going to say that plus, I want you to, then what do I want you to do? I want you to put, well, I could just say what I just said, put a 4 here. I could say, what am I going to do? I'm going to push that up to 8, but 8 is too high. It would be 8 minus 7. So I'm just going to say, give me a 1. Why? Because 7.5 would be pushed up a half step to 8, which is basically the same as a 1, but basically an octave up. So I'm going to say if that happens, bring it to a 1. All right. So, which is a little bit of a problem because you would think the 1 is going to be an octave lower the way we're going to set it. So if you put it as an 8 or something like that, then maybe you can code it to be an octave higher, which might be a better way to do it. But I'm going to keep it like this. So it's going to be a 1. Okay, and then if not, then what do you want us to do? Okay, last problem could be if that plus that happens to be 8, because if it was a 7, it's going to end up being an 8, right? So if that plus that is less than 8, then do that plus that, right? So wait a sec. The last one, hold on a second. I have to do one more and delete this. So if the value is false, I need one more if. If embedded, if that plus that is less than 8, then do that plus that. If not, then do that plus that minus 7. So that should cover all the bases, which again, it would be kind of nice if I could make it an 8 or push it up an octave, but that octave would be up here. So I could, like, it would be nice if I could write this out so an 8 actually represents in this column, you can still see it as an octave higher, even though it's an 8. In other words, if you're writing this column out by Nashville numbers, it would be nice if you can continue up to 8, 9, 10, and so on and so forth. And that would mean you can write multiple octaves in the same row, right? Or otherwise, if that was an 8, it would have to jump up to the next row. But again, I'll leave it like that. I don't want to get too crazy right now. So we'll say that'll be the rotation. So we'll go, okay, boom. And so there we have it. So notice you get 2 1s over here. Why do you get 2 1s? Because this was a 6.5. Well, which is going to give you a 7.5, which gets you back to 8 or 1. And this was a 7. The 7 takes you to 8, which is also a 1. So notice that these two are gonna read in our system as like the same pitch or same octave, whereas it might be better if they were an octave higher. But again, I'm not going to get but that's going to be the idea. So now we have a formula that kind of gives us what we want here if it's a number, and we've got a formula that kind of gives us what we want if it's a chord. Now I got to put these two things together somehow. So I'm going to try another logic test to do that, right? I'm going to say if this cell up top is a number, then I want you to do this bit. And then if it's not a number, I want you to do this bit. Okay, so let me see if I can do that, right? I'm going to say, okay, let's copy this first. I'm going to copy this. That's going to be the first thing I'm going to put in there. I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to say, let's put it right here to test it. And I'm going to say this is going to be equals if tab. And then I'm going to say is a number. So that's going to say if this thing is a number. So I'm going to scroll up and say if this right there, if that 1 is a number, which it is this time. If that is a number, close it up. And we'll say if then, now it says if the value is true. If that is a number, I'm going to do this whole thing. So I want you to do this whole bit if it's a number. Okay, and then comma, if the value is false, for right now, let's just put 2 quotes because I need to copy this formula. So if it's false, I'll just put 2 quotes for now, meaning just make it blank. So we're going to say, okay, and then it's a 2. If I copy it this way, does it work? Looks like it's working. And if I copy it this way, it should give me a blank. All right, looks right. Okay, so let's delete this side. So now I'm just going to go into this bit. And I'm going to copy this whole bit. Now this is staggered to the left one, so I'm going to have to move the formulas over, but I'm just going to copy that and say this. So now I could just go to the end point right here and say if it's not a number, instead of making a blank, do this. If it's not a number, then it's going to be a formula, and I want you to do this bit. Just do that. And so then we're going to say enter. Okay, so it didn't throw anything off, but now I'm in the wrong cell, so I'm going to double click on it and see up top. This is all referring to this cell right here. Everything should be this cell, so I'm just going to pull these over. Boom. Pull these over. Bam. And then enter. All right, so now I should be able to go this way, and it should be good. And I should be able to go this way, and it should be good. Let's see. So, yeah. So there we have it. So there we have it. So now I'm going to say, let's double click here and let's copy. And now the one thing that could be a problem is like, what if there was nothing up here? What if there was nothing? It's just blank because we didn't do it. Then it's an NA. That's ugly. So I don't want an NA. So, okay. So let's undo that and say, I could fix that by going in here and just embedding the whole thing, which was going to be an if NA tab. If it's an NA, go to the end of it, comma. Then what do you want to do? Double quotes, meaning just leave it blank. Don't do something ugly. All right, now let's delete it and try it again. If I just delete that, check it out. So now this one's blank. That gives me an NA. So the bottom one is correct. Top one needs an adjustment. So all right, I think that's it. So we'll just copy this whole thing. Copy. Bam. And we'll paste that right here. Bam. And then I'll just copy that across. And so now we've got a formula that I believe is working for us. All right. So then I can copy that. I think I can copy that up here and see if it works the octave up. So if I paste, well, let's undo. Let's paste formulas only. So I think it's working this octave as well. Let's double click and double check. It's pulling from the right cell. So yep. So I think this works on each of the octaves. Wait a sec. I should have. This shouldn't be in the middle. It should be in the bottom row. Oh man. Let's do this again. Let's just cut it and put it. Cut this. Copy this. And then I'll put it there. Boom. Copy this across. Bam. So it lines up to the same row. Delete this. Delete this. And then copy this. Copy this. And we'll put it right there. Paste formulae. Paste formulae. Paste formulae, paste formulae. All right, so that looks pretty good, I think. So now we've got that mapped out. Now that's fine. Cool. So now we've automatically rotated it. Again, I think there's a little bit of a kink in it because I would kind of like these. I still think it would be cool, like if in a Nashville number system, you were somehow able to go up above an octave, meaning type 8, 9, 10 over here so that you can see multiple octaves in one column. I'm not sure exactly if you did that. The problem with what I have right now is that I'm not sure how you would represent that when you convert it to letters. You'd have to somehow represent the fact that some of these letters are now an octave higher. You could do that. You could say, well, now this is an A octave higher, or an A1 up, A*1, or something like that. So I think that would be cool. Otherwise, you'd have to say when this pushes up to an 8, instead of it being here, it should be pushed up to this octave up top, right? That's the other way you can do it. I think it would be cleaner if you could just write this as an 8 down here, and then people have the option of writing with their 10 key just up above 7 notes. They can just keep on going higher if they want to. But anyways, that's where I'll just leave it there for now. So that's fine. Okay. So then I'm wondering if I can just copy the formula we had down here. So we had up here this, and then we did this formula, right? To then bring it to including the numbers that were the MIDI numbers that take into account octaves. So let's copy that and put it down here and see if that just works. Boom. I think it does, because now it's pulling this over here. It's giving us the same chord, and if I copy it this way, then it's going to give us the proper numbers, I believe. And so now we have a 69 as the proper number. And then down here, now down here we have a 67. Let me change this back to a 4 up top so we can work here. And then I'm going to delete this bit. I don't need this. This is no good or not necessary. Okay. So this I think is correct. But if I go on to if I transpose that over here, now this table is showing 60. So what I want this table to be showing now is this 60 is the key. And it should be now, because the lowest note should be a D, right? So if this is, so maybe I should have something here. So if this is, so this is the related Dorian. Let's change the title up top. This should be a Dorian. This is going to equal a Dorian. And then this is going to be equal a Dorian. And then over here, these should be Dorian. Let's do it this way. This equals the Dorian, just so we can see it on both sides. And this equals the Dorian. Okay, that's fine. All right, so what I'd like to be able to do then is to say that if this is the Dorian, so this is going to be equal to this 4 plus 2 to get to the Dorian, which would be a 6. And this will be equal to X lookup, that 6, comma. We want to find that 6 in our notes, let's say over here, and then return the letter, which will give us a D. Enter. So that should be done automatically. That'll automatically populate. And so there's a problem with that though, because if this is an 11 or something, a G, then it can't go over 12. This can't go over 12. So I have to say, like, if tab this plus this copy is less than 12, then do that plus that. If not, do that plus that minus 12. And that way, if this up here is like a 12, a G sharp, then this is going to go to a 2, which is an A sharp, instead of going to 14. Okay, let's bring this back to a C4. All right. So that's cool. That happens automatically. And so then when I go over here, this absolute number needs to be based on that D. So right now, what is this doing? This is going from up above. So I need, and then this is, okay, so what I need to do is say this is going to be equal to X lookup of this D right here. It needs to look up that D, comma, where do we want to look it up? We want to look it up in the middle of our MIDI system, in the middle range. Look it up right in here, comma, and return to me the numbers. So that should return a 62. And then all of the other numbers should be dependent on that. So it should be then 62 plus 1. It's going to copy that. And then we'll paste that up. So the MIDI numbers are right. And then paste formulas only. And then this is going to be equal to 62 minus 1. Copy that all the way down. And then paste formulas only. Okay, and then this C right there. So these relative numbers need to be changed as well. The relative numbers, this needs to be a 2 now. So this is going to be equal to a 2. How can I get that? So let's do it this way. This is going to be, well, it's going to be equal to the Dorian. The Dorian is a 2. So I could just say, well, it's a Dorian. Maybe like over here. This is probably an overkill. But here's my Dorian is a 2. Boom. Okay. And so if that's a 2, then that's a 2. And we should be able to just go up from there. So this is just going to be equal to 2 plus 1. So I can just copy, or let's copy that up to here, paste formulas. So that goes up to 13. And let's do it this way. Let's double click in here and say it's going to be equal to if tab this plus 1 copy is less than 12, then do that plus 1, comma, if not, do that plus 1 minus 12. So it's going to go back to 1 after it gets up to 12. So I'm going to say, okay. So there we have that. And then I can copy that and paste it all the way up. Paste it, formulas. So there we have it. Okay. Now this numbering system is going to be equal to, I'm going to start at 2. For the Nashville number is 2. So let's just scroll up here and pick up the 2, like this way maybe. And then I can copy that up. And so it goes 2 up to 7. And then it's basically going to repeat after that. So, well, let me think about this. It goes from 2 up to 7, and then this one is continuing. So it's going to go to 8 as we go up above, and this one down here is going to be a 1. So let's copy this. Well, let's just make this a 1. I'm just going to say this is going to be equal to this minus 1 is going to be a 1. And then when I go up top, I'm going to say then this is going to be equal to that 1 plus 7, because that's the formula that I think is going to be easiest for us to map out. So it's going to be an 8. So I'm going to copy the 8, and then I'll copy that formula all the way up top and paste formulas only. And so I think that works, right? Okay, so now we're starting on the 2, but we're reaching up to, from an absolute Nashville system, a 9, an 8, and a 9 from an absolute Nashville number system, but that's still within the 12 note distance. That's why I feel like this over here should be able to go up to an 8 and a 9, because it could take in that absolute distance. But maybe it still works because the local distance would also be equal to 2. And so then this is going to be the same as we go up from here up to here. And then this is going to be the same here. And then, but then the local distance is going to go to 7, and then it's going to start over again. So now we're going to say it's going to be, so it's going to now be equal to the 1. And I can copy that up. So that 1, I can copy this up. Paste formulas only. Right. Okay, and then when I go down, it's going to go 1, 2, and then this is going to start at the 7. So this should now equal this should equal then the 7. Enter, and then I should be able to copy this down. And so, okay. So now so that makes sense, I think. So, okay, we're missing a 0.5 here. Let me go back up and say, if I go back up here and say this equals what is after the 2, it's a 1.5. A 1.5, and if I copy that down, then it gets me to a 1. So that makes sense. Okay, so then if I count this up, then it goes 1, whole step to 2, whole step 3, half step to 4, whole step to 5, whole step to 6, whole step to 7, and then it should start over here. This should be equal to that one. Enter. Okay, there we go. Let's copy that and paste it up this way, and paste it the formulas only. Okay, so now we've got, that looks correct. All right, and then if I go down, we're going to say this is back down to 1 here. So this then should be a 7. So I'm going to say this is going to be equal to the 7 up top, and that pattern should repeat. So let's copy that down this way. Paste formulas only. Okay, now this should be a D. That 62, I believe, is correct, but this now needs to be a D. So I'm going to fix this by saying this should be X lookup, tab, find that 62, comma, in the MIDI numbering system, way over here. In the MIDI numbering system, Control Shift down, the whole thing this time, comma, and then return to me the related letter. Return to me then the related letter. Yes, Control Shift down and enter. So boom. So that'll give me the D there. Now if I double click on that, I'm going to F4 the range, F4 the range, F4, 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 locking it in, $ before the letters and numbers. Copy that and go up all the way up and down, so that it'll look at all of these numbers from a MIDI system and give me the local letter. So we'll say, okay, paste the formula only, and there we have it. Why is these two are giving me $? Because I think we're out of the range right there. So I think I'm okay with that, because that's outside the how far I went with the numbering system. So I'll copy this and paste it down here, and paste formulas. Okay, so now we've shifted the columns so that we're still on the D now is lining up here, and that should automatically, when I copy and paste this whole thing down, this X lookup should copy down properly. Everything should copy down properly, I believe. Did I hard code anything in here? I feel like I did that a little bit sloppily, but I think we have it here. So these are so then it's pulling in, and so these are the right numbers here. Now if I go to the right, does it automatically pull over here correctly? So now these numbers, where are they pulling from? Let's say this is going from there. So that's right. So if that first column is correct, these will be correct. That's good. And then over here we have a D. Didn't we start with a D? Like I thought this first one would have a D in it. How come I don't have a D right here, I wonder? Okay, so these are all pulling from this up top. So I need to change that number down. So okay. So now if I go in here, say okay, undo this. If I want to fix this side, I double click on it and say okay, it has these two look like they're going to the right spot. But if I go up here, then it's pulling up here. Now I'd like to just pull all of these down, but that's a long way to pull it. So everything that's a BD 27, I want to make it be down here, which is a BD 71. So I might be able to do that with like a find and replace. So I can find it. Let's find one in here just so I can see the context. So here's a BD 27. It's also a mixed reference with a $sign. So I'm going to copy that and then I'm going to enter. I'm going to put my cursor here, hold down Control and somewhere else, attempting so it doesn't do it everywhere. Home tab and then find, and I want to find and replace. So it says just replace now. Replace, and then there's the one I want to find and replace. I want to replace it with this column, which is BD, is that right? BD 71. So find that and replace it with BD 71. And then just replace all of those. Hopefully that, so it found 9 of them. Okay. Let's see if that fixed it. Let's go down here and say, all right, looks like that's doing what we want. Let's see where else it's coming from. So we have that. It's pulling now from here. That's good. And then it's doing its thing over here. It's looking in this column. That's good. And returning this whole bit. And I think this whole bit is good because we used the absolute numbering system. So I think that works. So let's copy that formula and paste it on this whole bit here. So paste that here, paste it, formulas, bam. All right, so I think that, okay, now what happened here? Why is this one down here? And I think that's because of that's the Ionian. It's still giving me one that's outside down below. Dang it. Because, okay, why is that? Because if I go over here, now the Ionian is no longer the lowest note in the series. I want it to go up from the I want it to go up from the 2. So it's seeing the Ionian as the 1 down there. So I might have to still copy this over and say that. So I need to say if this is a 1, then it needs to be an 8. Oh, okay. I thought that would work. I had a different system in my practice thing, but I see how to possibly fix that. That's going to be my problem right now. And so I'll think about how, let's make it red. So I think, oh, not there. I think I know how to fix that. So we'll deal with that. But everything else looks like it's populating pretty good. So if I go over here, I think it's populating properly, it looks like, for the most part. Okay. And then this is the numbering system. Nashville numbers. You just got that one that's down below. So anyways, I think we should be able to do that. We rotate it around this way. Okay. So then I'll deal with this issue. We'll tinker with that next time. But that's the general idea. So hopefully the principle is we should be able to rotate this around. Now, this one got converted to a 60. And like again, a 60 is down here. So where did these go? Yeah, it didn't pull over. It's not pulling over these ones either. It's only pulling over the chords. Let's see this again. Let's try this. Let me check this out. There's still an issue here. There's a problem. There's a problem happening. See, this is pulling from there, that 4, and it's looking for that 4 in the Dorian. That's a Dorian 4. So you would think it would be finding it here and returning it right there. But it's not. Dang it. What's your problem? What's your problem, man? It should be finding that 4. Alright. So that it's doing that, and then it's looking for this 4. It's looking. It should. This is a 3, right? It should be finding. Actually, it should be right here. It should be saying if that is a 4, if this 4 matches this 4, why is that not working? If lookup, then give me the 65. Okay, so that's another issue. I'm running along here. So we'll toy with this one and that one, and we'll tinker with it. But I think the general concept should work, that we should be able to rotate this around and automatically adjust it. All right.